June 20th, 2013, en route to Alaska, Deanna, native of San Antonio, Texas, fulfills her love of travel and adventure while on a cruise retreat with her youth ministry, Faith Factor. It's all fun and games with a Christian message. And what young person could turn down a church-subsidized 18-day cruise? But after midnight, the fun and games turn deadly serious. And in the morning, everybody is asking the same question. Where is Deanna? There's a lot Deanna doesn't know about her new friends from church. Sadly, her journey is about to become a one-way trip. Athletic, adventurous, popular Deanna joins the youth ministry as a 10-year-old to socialize. Deanna's growing up away from the group. She plans to study to become a personal trainer and nutritionist.
As a kid, Deanna was great. She was a total sweetheart. Her faith was extremely important to her, and everybody respected that about her. In Sunday school, we shared a class, and she's always the person with the answers to the questions. She knew the Bible backwards and forwards. When Dee found out that there were cruises that could take her to places like Alaska, for example, she thought that might be kind of a way in to kind of get into some of these communities and not only see part of the world, but also kind of use that as a chance to kind of spread her message as well.
The cruise, a new initiative for the ministry, is one the sporty Deanna would never miss. She sees it as a last hurrah for her involvement in the youth ministry. But Deanna is headed for a destination no one could have imagined. The ministry's vision of discipleship, built on a foundation of leadership development, has served Deanna well and has made lots of friends over the years. She has met a woman named Elizabeth, a very recent member of the youth ministry, who interests her a lot. On the surface, everything seems to be going right for Deanna. But things are not as they seem. And Deanna is very far from the safety of home. Even though this cruise takes Deanna far away, she keeps in close contact with her family through social media, telling them all about the amazing places she's seeing and the fun she's having. Deanna may love adventure, but being away from her parents is not something she finds easy to get used to. She buys a very expensive soapstone carving for her parents as a surprise.
Her parents were a huge part of her life, and so I know that being away from them for so long was kind of hard for her, but that kind of free spirit that she had, that travel bug, kind of overrode it sometimes, so she was able to get by without them.
This is pretty exciting for Deanna. She's this young girl, finally she gets to do a trip without her parents around, no one in her family. So for the first time ever, she doesn't have those watchful eyes, that parental control. She's able to let loose with her friends from the youth ministry, have some fun on this cruise, and she meets a girl that she's really attracted to, and they start spending time together as young people do. So it's this really exciting, giddy time for Deanna.
A youth group is considered to be, in many aspects, very well-behaved, very gentle type of people. This is an opportunity for them to just go and be regular kids outside of that type of mindset.
Most of these young people have never seen this kind of luxury before. It's like they're on this town on the ocean. There's so much that they can do. There's unlimited food and drink and restaurants and places to hang out and tons of entertainment, places to party. So this is a really heady experience for Deanna and her friends. Most of them have never had anything like this happen to them before. On vacation is a great time to try on new personas or be someone a little different, have more fun, be more relaxed, be a different person. So just as Deanna may be discovering new sides to herself, maybe not everyone else on the ship is who they seem to be either.
Both fiery, passionate, and athletic, Deanna and Elizabeth look like the perfect match. They are living the dream together, inseparable. At least, at first.
The first time Dee told me about Elizabeth, I knew this was definitely a different situation than anybody else. She hadn't been very open with me about romantic partners in the past, but with Elizabeth, I knew that there was kind of a different spark there. The two of them basically became inseparable as far as I knew. A lot of physical touch, contact. I'm sure some people asked some questions, but they were unafraid of it. They were proud to be who they were.
She is pretty naive, and this is her first chance, away from her parents' religious influence, to come out and be who she really is and explore her feelings for Elizabeth and see where that takes them.
Friends describe the relationship as very, very intense. And the way their brand new romance is ramping up, they're vulnerable to a crash. And that crash is named Zachary. The ship makes a stop at a port of call, and Zachary comes aboard. He's the newest member of the ministry and an old friend of Elizabeth's. Elizabeth and Zachary share a lot of history, and some say they even share a bed. Deanna is devastated to see her first love is shaping into a triangle.
The close quarters of a cruise ship has a way of intensifying how people feel about each other. Those dynamics can get very, very serious very quickly, more so than they would in real life when people have school and work and other responsibilities. Right now, Elizabeth and Deanna are just together all the time, so the relationship is moving at warp speed.
Deanna goes from ecstatically happy to completely miserable fast.
So you can understand when sometimes a wrench gets thrown into the situation or things don't start to always turn out the way you expect. There's some friction. People can start to feel jealous or concerned. If you haven't had something like this before, it's very frightening to feel that it might be taken away.
Deanna causes ripples when she takes some distance from her stormy relationship, avoids the youth ministry tour, and goes onshore alone. On shore, she will make an important phone call to her best friend back home in San Antonio. Deanna confides in her best friend that her new relationship that seemed to be the one is giving her so much worry that she doesn't know how to handle it. Having had some much-needed time to herself on shore, Deanna hopes that she and Elizabeth will pick up in their relationship where they left off before Zachary.
You know the feeling when you meet kind of a special person and it's entirely different than what you've experienced before, and they take up every thought in your brain and you can't think about anything else, and it causes the rest of your life to start to suffer because your entire focus is on this one person.
Deanna is welcomed back into Elizabeth's open arms and is never seen by her family again. Back on board, Deanna gets straight to her ministry activities. She's always happy and fulfilled interacting with young people.
I always knew Deanna would probably end up working with kids in some capacity because she seemed to always be playing with the younger ones and including everybody, and I thought she was just really good at that kind of thing.
Later that night, she messages her family. They aren't responsive, so Deanna assures them she'll call to check in the next day. And then she goes out to find her friends and socialize. She begins the evening meeting for beers and conversation with her close friends Leanne and Paul. It is relaxed, and Deanna is her fun-loving self. There's an informal plan to meet up later.
On one of our calls, Dee had to end the call early, and she mentioned she was going to this place called Deck 7. I asked her what she meant by that, and she was kind of cagey about the information, but it was some sort of a private area for some of these ministry folks. I don't know if it was maybe cordoned off from the rest of the crew. From the little she told me, it sounded kind of interesting.
The cruise ship is huge, and for young people, there are numerous parties to be found and lots of social life to choose from, if they can avoid their chaperones.
With the older youth on the ship, including Deanna, partying, blowing off steam, that's expected. So the friends all plan to meet up at this bar, but unfortunately, they just don't manage to connect.
Deanna is captured by CCTV footage at 5:45 in the morning of June 21st on a deck phone, talking to someone, disheveled and crying.
Typically, people don't just cry for absolutely no reason. Something has happened to cause her to have this emotional reaction. She may be upset at news she's received. Maybe somebody said something to her that upset her. We don't know, but we know that that is sort of a defining moment in the sense that we know something has happened to trigger that response. We talk about timelines and looking back where people have come from and what's happened prior to an event and then what happens immediately after that event as being important to determine what actually occurred. Somebody observing a person in distress or having an emotional reaction to something is certainly an indication of an event. We just need to find out what that event is. It may not be anything, but it's certainly something to give us a point of reference and get us to start asking questions about what's going on.
Deanna is on a youth ministry cruise retreat, and she's having the time of her life. She loves the lifestyle and the adventure of travel. The relative freedom of the cruise has allowed Deanna to get physical with another ministry youth, Elizabeth. However, Elizabeth also seems to have a boyfriend. Things are happening fast aboard the cruise, and really, Deanna barely knows these people. Are all of her new friends really friends? Come June 21st, everyone aboard the ship will begin to wonder, where's Deanna? When Deanna doesn't show up for breakfast, the chaperones are worried and report her missing. The ship is searched, and the Coast Guard is called in. The search of the waters and the ship reveal nothing. Deanna seemingly has vanished into thin air, and her friends are desperate. One clue is located. There is a pair of flip-flops lying abandoned, believed to be Deanna's. Their location at the edge of the ship on Deck 7 gives them monumental significance. Anxious to trace Deanna, the onboard closed-circuit television footage is accessed. No images can be found of Deanna except her tearful phone call, which includes the appearance of a young male youth ministry member. The young man could be of interest to the investigation. Ship staff has no choice but to inform Deanna's parents of her disappearance. Deanna's parents, Wayne and Rosemary, are contacted by the cruise line at 10:45 p.m. They are told of their daughter's disappearance and that the cruise line is conducting their own investigation, and they will fly them out to meet the ship right away. The very next day, after the disappearance, the cruise line holds a small ceremony for the distressed youth. The ship's crew puts flowers at the railing on deck 7, implying that this is where she went overboard due to the location of the flip-flops. But no one from the cruise line will answer any questions. Instead of providing closure, the ceremony causes upset and confusion.
These flip-flops, there's no proof that they're even Deanna's, and no one's really checked to make sure they're really hers. Even among her friends, they're surprised that no one has asked them to confirm that the flip-flops are actually hers.
After the initial phone call that promises to rush them out to the ship, the parents find it difficult to get a hold of the cruise line and iron out the details of their flight. These terrified parents are repeatedly stalled getting to the scene of their daughter's disappearance. Their stress and frustration is building.
Well, Dee's parents, just like Dee, they were not passive people, so as soon as they could, they flew out halfway to meet the ship before it even returned to port so that they could find some leads or learn any kind of information they could about where she might have gone or what might have happened to her.
The jet-lag, exhausted parents are brought to a room, shown a small segment of the tearful CCTV footage. Ship staff points out that Deanna is leaving the shot, headed to the bow of the ship, because this is where her flip-flops were found. The parents learned the theories. Deanna was probably swept over the railing by a rogue wave. The parents are shown where the flip-flops were found, but they find it hard to believe their daughter could be swept off the ship from this location. The investigator is brought in by the cruise company, seeing what went wrong in Deanna's disappearance. The parents are assured the investigation is ongoing, and the detective is hard at work, finding out what happened to their daughter.
It seemed like it took a long time for the investigation to actually get started, and finally when it did, they only sent one person. How can one investigator find out anything? Don't you need a whole team of forensic analysts or something for this? Can't imagine one person was nearly enough. Her parents were super upset, and I couldn't believe it either. Are we trying to find this woman or not? She's missing.
Overwhelmed and disoriented, they put their trust in the investigation. The last person to see Deanna alive is of great interest in the investigation. Why was Paul on deck at 5:45 a.m., the same time Deanna was? But Deanna's youth ministry friend can only report he ran into her by fluke. Deanna insists she's fine, and that's why Paul simply walks away. The question remains, is he telling the truth? Meanwhile, Deanna's other friend, Leanne, explains how earlier they were all hanging out in her cabin. Leanne has strong opinions about the flip-flops and also uncovers details about Deanna's romantic relationship. But the investigation does not appear to be digging deep for motives. Elizabeth, who's known as a bit of a party girl, says she was with Deanna the night and early morning of her disappearance. Elizabeth says that she, Deanna, and Zachary had a few beers and listened to music together in a cabin until 2 a.m.
We're talking about young adults who may or may not have the capacity to deal with this relationship issue.
Almost as soon as the three are alone together, the situation gets steamy. Things quickly evolve into an intimate threesome, whether it was planned this way or not.
There's no telling how somebody reacts when a third person is brought into an intimate relationship. It may have been consensual, but without understanding the ramifications of what happens when it actually occurs, they may make that decision on a whim. It may seem like a simple thing, but now suddenly 3 people are involved in very difficult circumstance. Jealousy is an emotion that frequently comes into play when we're talking about violence between intimate partners. Especially in this kind of case, there are a lot of emotions that suddenly come to the fore that may not have been there not long before.
Elizabeth admits that Deanna was not happy after the threesome.
So who says that this threesome with Zachary was consensual? From Elizabeth's point of view, it was, but unfortunately, we can't ask Deanna if it was consensual from her side.
Deanna's tearful and wants to go get some air. Deanna wedges the door open. Elizabeth falls asleep, losing track of what is going on with her friend. Elizabeth regrets she didn't go walking with Deanna. She's convinced she could have saved Deanna had she been with her, because clearly something horrible happened to Deanna on the walk. Then Elizabeth drops a bombshell, something she's kept private, that she now feels is her duty to reveal. And she is sure that what she knows is the key to the vanishing of Deanna. Deanna, on a youth ministry retreat cruise, has fallen in love. But the affair is allegedly now a love triangle, and Deanna is now missing. Her friend Paul is seemingly the last person to see her alive that night. Or was he? It's possible someone else sees her one last time. Deanna's friend Elizabeth reveals a dramatic story no one else is aware of. Elizabeth says that Deanna has been very depressed about being unable to admit she is a lesbian. In fact, Deanna goes up on the rails and threatens to throw herself overboard the night before she disappears. Elizabeth is sure that suicide is the answer to Deanna's disappearance. This information about Deanna's suicidal state of mind seems to back up the presence of the abandoned flip-flops. But this new information does not fit with what the parents know about Deanna. They are convinced Deanna was not suicidal.
So rumors started to appear that maybe Deanna had been depressed or something, which I don't believe for a second. Not her. She had a world of support behind her, and her parents were supportive of her lifestyle. There's no way it could have been anything coming from them either.
It would indicate to me that the person that brought this information forward may not realize that the story they're telling can be easily dispelled, that they may in fact have something to do with it, that they've come up with a story to try to cover their own actions. It would certainly make me question this person as a suspect.
The parents want to talk to the person who Deanna called that night from the deck phone. If they know why Deanna is crying, they may get some answers and some insight into her mindset at the time of the disappearance. This will be the key to the investigation. Strangely, the friend the cruise line identifies as the person Deanna was crying to on the phone is unable or unwilling to reveal details of their conversation. She only says Deanna was upset, but was better by the end of their conversation. The theories of Deanna's disappearance are examined in more detail.
There was this theory that maybe a rogue wave on Deck 7 swept Deanna overboard, but that seems really unlikely because there was a 6-foot-plus steel wall along with other safety precautions.
If somebody was to come up with a theory that included a rogue wave washing over the ship as a cause of her disappearance, I think it would be very quickly debunked. The idea that a rogue wave came up out of nowhere without the knowledge of the crew, especially the captain, is highly unlikely. The idea that a person could be washed away but their flip-flops left behind is another thing that would quickly dispel any notion that that theory is accurate. Cruise ships are highly technological in terms of the security systems they have, the weather information systems they have, the navigation systems they employ. They're incredibly precise instruments on these ships that help guide them and predict weather, and there's no way a rogue wave could come along without the knowledge of the crew.
So it doesn't seem likely that Deanna could have been swept overboard even if this rogue wave existed. Is it possible that maybe this phone call happened on another deck? It is possible that Deanna was there. She loved Deck 7. She could have gone there in a crisis for comfort. The running track she liked to use was there. And, of course, that's where the flip-flops were found. So it is possible. If Deanna really was in such a depressed state that she was suicidal, as Elizabeth claims, she could have decided to end it right there and jumped overboard. The only problem is all of the closed-circuit television cameras are in that area. There's tons of them, and none of them have any footage showing Deanna.
Deanna's parents feel the disappearance theories are lacking, but there's no definitive proof of anything. No conclusions have been drawn yet. At the request of the cruise line, Wayne and Rosemary pack up their daughter's belongings from the cabin. Some of her things include the soapstone carving and a scribbled message on paper to phone her mother. All evidence points to a young woman with everything to live for. Her parents also find the flip-flops that apparently belong to Deanna, but written on the side of the flip-flop is someone else's room number.
First thing I would question is who put them there and why did they put them there? If they didn't belong to the victim or the missing person, how did they get there? And are they being used to try to throw an investigator off? So that, to me, they would be planted.
The parents make it clear that the flip-flops are not Deanna's. They're told that further CCTV camera images need enhancing and are being sent to the FBI. Analysis is imperative because Deanna's disheveled appearance is due to the fact that she appears to be wearing oversized men's clothes that no one has seen her wear before. The parents are assured that the detective will contact them with more information as it becomes available. The heartbroken parents return to Texas. With the FBI analyzing the footage of Deanna, a breakthrough seems imminent. Youth ministry member Deanna has vanished from a church retreat, and the cruise line seems intent on calling it suicidal or accidental. Deanna has an intense relationship with another ministry member that turns into a love triangle. And yet, another ministry member is the last person to see her alive. Why was he there when Deanna is in crisis at 5:45 a.m.? And why is Deanna last seen wearing what looks to be oversized men's clothes? The cruise line's investigation promises to answer these questions soon. Back in Texas, the parents are shocked to learn the cruise line detective interviews just 6 of the approximately 3,000 passengers and crew, and that his investigation lasts 1 single day. And despite promises, the detective will not return their calls. These parents are living a nightmare.
So I remember hearing from my parents that Dee's parents themselves had kind of taken over the investigation, started leading it themselves. I guess they were unhappy with the way that the cruise line was handling things. Maybe they thought there was information being hidden from them. They really took over and took charge. Deanna's father got pretty upset with the cruise line and fed up with trying to deal with kind of their rope around. So he went out and hired his own private investigator to see if they could find anything out about Deanna.
Investigators aboard the ship tell the family that Deanna was allegedly swept overboard by a rogue wave. This theory does not sit well with her family, and they hire Matthew, a private investigator, to look into her disappearance and the feasibility of such an unusual event.
A number of factors would come into play. The fall from the ship, it's great height, several stories high, so the impact with the water can leave a person incapacitated or dead, upon impact. And then we talk about the fact that it's just off the coast of Alaska. The waters are frigid. Being salt water, the water's much colder than anybody would anticipate, so you don't have long to survive in water that temperature. The result of falling from a ship is severe. I would expect if a rogue wave hit the ship, more than just one person would have been washed away, first of all. Secondly, people would have suffered other injuries on the ship from being pushed around as a result of the wave. It's highly unlikely that only one person could be affected by this rogue wave.
Even though the investigator is given access to the security footage, no audio was recorded to hear what Deanna is saying on the phone call.
The concept of privacy certainly comes into play. People would expect some level of intrusion into their privacy for safety reasons. Surveillance cameras situated around the ship, everybody's aware that they're there. But to listen in on people's private conversations, that's something that contravenes many laws. Can't be done without their knowledge. I wouldn't expect that there'd be any microphones anywhere on the ship to record conversations.
There's different rules at sea. The normal rules of investigation don't apply on cruise ships as they would on land. But Matthew isn't deterred by this. He's digging a bit deeper. He wants to find a motive.
Matthew is now confident that Deanna wasn't washed overboard by a rogue wave. Matthew looks for anyone to corroborate Elizabeth's story about Deanna threatening to throw herself off the ship, or a shred of proof Deanna wanted to end her life. He can't find anything.
You would think out of anyone on this cruise ship, the person that would most want to find out what happened to Deanna would be Elizabeth. They were in love. They had this new relationship. So what would motivate Elizabeth to lie about what happened that night? What's going on with this consensual threesome? Is there something that she's trying to hide? Is she trying to take the suspicion off herself and Zachary and divert it somewhere else? There's something going on with Elizabeth. Her story seems to raise more questions than answers. And speaking of questions, what about that oversized men's clothing that Deanna was wearing when she made that final phone call? There's got to be a clue there. Why is no one questioning that? Why is no one looking further into that?
A new revelation comes in from an unexpected place. When Deanna went ashore by herself and made a call from Alaska, she confided something very disturbing to her best friend, and her friend now feels the information should be known. Deanna's best friend in San Antonio reveals Deanna confided that she was terrified of returning to the cruise ship because Deanna feared she was about to be sexually assaulted. In Deanna's personal effects, her parents find her favorite shorts ripped to tatters.
There's a lot of questions swirling around this threesome. What really happened that night? Was it truly consensual, as Elizabeth said, or was Deanna forced into this? And if she was, what happened to her? Was there a violent confrontation? Was she assaulted?
Combined with this new information, they are certain they have compelling proof that Deanna has been sexually assaulted on board the cruise ship. But who did it? Who on board was Deanna afraid of?
Did someone want to get rid of her afterwards and make sure she couldn't report them? There's a lot of questions still.
All the information is adding up. Private investigator Matthew is fully convinced that a sexual assault took place. Finding the previous investigation totally and utterly unsatisfactory, Matthew questions Paul, as he was the last person to see Deanna on the phone that night. Perhaps he overheard pieces of her conversation that can uncover more clues. With the real investigation underway, Matthew learns there was much more going on behind Deanna's disappearance than was previously revealed. The parents have been waiting for months to get information from the cruise line. As they continue waiting to access the official ship reports, Matthew sees no reason to wait. He does his own analysis of Deanna's bizarre clothing in the security camera footage with shocking results. Popular athletic Deanna of San Antonio, Texas, is enjoying life to the fullest on her youth ministry retreat cruise. Away from the watchful eyes of her parents, she's begun an affair with a woman from her congregation. But then the unthinkable happens. Deanna is gone. The cruise line appears anxious to call her disappearance misadventure or suicide. Private investigator Matthew scrutinizes Elizabeth's story, feeling as though something isn't adding up.
Once Matthew starts digging, this case is far but dead in the water. The suspicions start to point towards Deanna's lover, Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's old friend, Zachary, who had recently joined the youth ministry.
Matthew thinks Elizabeth is likely lying. The details of her story keep changing.
Well, you have to consider what she's saying. You certainly have to take it with a grain of salt, so to speak. She may have a reason to not be truthful. She may be telling the truth. There's really no way to know at this point. It's her word against a person who's no longer here. I would question why now suddenly Deanna would choose to have an intimate relationship with a man when up until now she's known that that's not something she wanted. What choice did she have in this relationship?
At no time has anyone ever heard of Deanna being interested in men romantically. So there's something there too. Why would she want to have sex with Zachary?
Elizabeth explains the threesome was mutual because Deanna wedged the door open, which in Elizabeth's mind means she was complicit in the act and not forced into it. Something Matthew finds odd is why wedging a door open would prove consent. Something isn't adding up.
We're taking her word that this in fact happened, that the door was propped open by Deanna. That in and of itself, to me, doesn't necessarily indicate consent to an intimate relationship. Sure, you can leave your door open to a friend to come and spend some time with you. That doesn't imply that anything else should follow that.
The matter of Deanna's strange appearance on CCTV footage is still a mystery. No one from the cruise line provides a theory to this bizarre image of Deanna.
Would indicate to me that maybe she put them on in a hurry to get out of a particular situation. Certainly the clothing may be able to be traced back to somebody else wearing them on the ship at some point, so we might be able to find out whose clothing it is. The fact that she is wearing that clothing and not her own may give us an indication as to where something took place. We would then go and maybe have a place to look for her clothing. Those are all factors that may come into play. Torn clothing in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean anything, but given, the report of a person going missing, it certainly points to the fact that there may have been some sort of foul play. There may have been an attempt to get that clothing off, and she wasn't consenting to it, and it was a struggle to get that done. That's typically how clothing like that would become torn.
As a private investigator, Matthew weaves the threads of Deanna's vanishing together. At last, there comes a promising new development, one that no one sees coming.
So then two strange things happen. Suddenly, this case has new life. There's a hit on Deanna's credit card. Someone is using it. And a woman claims to have seen Deanna in Italy. It's either Deanna or whoever hurt her and got rid of her on the move. What's going on?
The last known image of Deanna from San Antonio, Texas, holds clues as to what happened to her on the night of her vanishing. A few weeks after Deanna vanishes, a strange event takes place. A possible sighting of Deanna occurs, and her credit card is used.
It's a one-time use. The ability to track beyond that is gone. It could have gone missing any time prior to the event. We really don't know.
These were definitely fresh leads, fresh new blood in this case, but they fizzled into nothing. Unfortunately, the hope that the family will ever find their daughter alive or discover what happened to her is not looking very likely. Those hopes have been dashed. The mystery of what happened to Deanna is still wide open.
Matthew continues to try and gain access to official reports, but he gets nowhere. The U.S. authorities do not have jurisdiction over the case and have no legal access to the evidence related to the investigation.
Well, the very fact that we don't have any remains, we don't have the actual person who's gone missing, we don't have the body. We have two people who have told us a story which is plausible. There's no evidence to show what they're saying is incorrect or is a lie or a fabrication, and there's really no further information at this point, other than the last two people who claim to have been around her. We have a circumstantial evidence to show that she was upset and then she was gone. We have her girlfriend and her girlfriend's friend on the ship who may have had contact with her, but beyond that, we don't know anything more.
No business wants a murder on the books, especially an unsolved one. However, for now, it seems that someone has gotten away with murder.
They're difficult to get out of your mind. You always wonder whether you could have done something more, whether you could have asked a different question that may have led to a better answer to provide you more clarity with respect to what happened. But having a disappearance of a person unsolved is very difficult for an investigator. We want closure as much as the family does. We want to know what happened.
Private investigator Matthew has tried every door repeatedly. He has fought for justice for Deanna and her family, but sometimes the door remains locked. Elizabeth and Zachary never returned to the youth ministry. That would be an act of faith they just weren't up for. As for Deanna's friend Paul, who saw her on the phone, he is released from any suspicions. The same goes for Leanne, who remains in the ministry.